You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to give you the inspiration you need to get started in the outdoors or keep moving if you're already there. Now here's your host, Curt Linville.
Hi friends, thanks for listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast today. This episode is going to be something a little different. Rather than interviewing a guest, I'm going to do a solo episode, and it's going to be about one of the many characteristics of adventure sports that can lead us to living a better life. Some of you may know that I wrote a book that was released a bit over a year ago called 99 Words, Building a Better Life. And I want to, this is kind of an announcement, but it's a pre-announcement really. I want to let you know that I plan to start another podcast. Now, it's not going to be a regular podcast like this one, but I want to do a podcast that is more related to building a better life, more like the book 99 Words. And I don't have a name for the podcast yet. It's not even released yet. Think about an author that's talking about a book that's not yet published. That's kind of where I am. But that book is published, 99 Words, Building a Better Life. It's on Amazon. I wanted to do today's episode as a little bit of a sample of what that podcast will be about. When Travis and I started the Adventure Sports Podcast, we agreed that it would not be political. We wouldn't talk about religion. We would just stick to living life, adventure sports, and interviewing people that have done amazing things. And that's what the Adventure Sports Podcast is about and always has been about. Mason continued that tradition, and I have continued that tradition now that I've reacquired the show from Mason. However, the new podcast is going to be a completely open format where anything and everything can be discussed. We won't shy away from talks about politics or ideologies or religion or philosophy or all the things that come up in daily life, in current events. We'll be talking about those things, but more importantly, we'll be talking about how to live your best life. And something happened to me yesterday that kind of inspired me, and I'd like to tell you a story. This is about one of the things that we learn from adventure that applies to everyday life in a very significant way. But let's start with a little backstory. So we have 4 kids. My wife Ann and I have 4 kids, and they're all adults now. But my daughter Lydia got married 2 summers ago. And then last summer, my son Caleb got married. And then just a few weeks ago, this summer, my son Daniel got married. And then add to all that excitement, our youngest son Luke graduated from college with an engineering degree and just started a new job yesterday in the Front Range of Colorado. I've said on the show several times that the most fun I ever had doing adventure was with my kids as they were growing up, and I taught them the adventures that I loved, and little by little they each kind of chose their favorites. Caleb loved skiing, backcountry skiing, alpine skiing, extreme skiing. He loved that, and mountain biking. Daniel became the fisherman, and he loves skiing and mountain biking and did very, very well as a competitive mountain biker. But he just really loves nature and living things. He likes interacting with the animals and the aquatic animals and all that sort of stuff. Lydia really loved any adventure sport that involved community, being with friends and family. And that might be camping, backpacking, car camping. Lydia, by the way, also enjoyed rock climbing. Luke, likewise, really liked community, and he enjoyed 14ers and backpacking and skiing. And regardless, when the kids wanted to do something, rather than Dad planning an adventure trip for the family, it kind of turned into, what would you like to do? Okay, let's do that. And so I've been following the adventures of my teenage and post-teenage children for the last several years, and we've had so much fun doing so many things. Why do I tell you all of that? Well, I want to explain why yesterday I was playing disc golf, of all things. Disc golf is a fun sport. It gets you outside, you get exercise, and you get to learn a skill, and you're aiming for a target, and you're trying to accomplish, a very hard thing. And this kind of became Luke's thing. It's funny. When I bring up disc golf, people often roll their eyes. I know it's ridiculous, but disc golf just has this reputation. The reputation is, oh, you're throwing a frisbee at a basket, at some chains. How hard is that? We all throw frisbees. But let me tell you what I learned about disc golf. There are hundreds of different types of discs, and they're not frisbees, and they don't throw the same way at all. You have to learn how to throw all over again, and these discs are high performance, so if you tweak your throw just a little bit, you get a completely different outcome, and the courses are set up so getting to par or below par is really challenging, and it takes using the right disc, the right skill. You have wind to contend with. You know, when you play ball golf, is what we like to call it, then you understand all the nuances of the sport. It's a really great sport, but people think, oh, ball golf is cool and elegant and established and challenging, and disc golf is throwing a frisbee at a tree. Not so. You ball golfers out there, keep doing it. It's awesome. I love that too. But maybe you should try disc golf and see what it's all about. It is so nuanced and so challenging and actually quite a lot of fun. And another beautiful thing about it is it's something you can do very affordably. But back to Luke. Luke became interested in disc golf a couple of years ago, and last year he actually qualified to go to nationals. So Luke got pretty good at disc golf pretty quickly, and he started inviting me to play disc golf with him. And so, of course, anything to enjoy that family time as my kids are aging out, you realize. And this week was the first week that my wife and I were empty nesters. The kids are gone. They've all moved on now. But I decided that I enjoyed taking walks, and I really love the beautiful scenic area around Gunnison and around the disc golf course. And I thought, if I played disc golf every day, I'd get a 1.5 mile walk in, and I would have a fun distraction, get to meet people, get out a little bit. So I went and played disc golf yesterday. Hole 13, lucky 13, you throw across a pond. Now, if you threw at the edge of the pond across the pond, that would be one thing, but you don't. The tee box is pretty good distance back behind the pond, and the pin, the target, is right on the shore of the pond on the other side. So you want to throw across the pond, but not very far across the pond, and you're starting from way back. Well, what happened yesterday was a repeat of what had happened the last time I played. It was 2 games in a row. I got to the pond, and I struggled to see the pin. I struggled to see the goal. Instead, I saw the obstacle. I saw the pond. And yesterday, I threw my disc, and, I had played 12 really good holes. I was a couple of points over par, and of course, my disc skimmed right into the pond because I was focused on the pond instead of the pin. That had happened the last time I played as well. I was too distracted, and instead of looking at the goal, I started looking at all the distractions. I started looking at the obstacles and the challenges in the way, and I threw my disc in. So both times I had to go swimming. And it's kind of funny to see me with all my clothes on, diving in a pond and swimming down to the bottom and feeling around for a disc. You get the picture, right? That's not the point. The point is what happens when we're distracted from the goal, distracted from the target. That's when life gets screwy. And I was sitting on the bank, dripping wet, putting my shoes back on and thinking about this. And I thought, you know what? I want to share that on the podcast. I wanted to share it with you people because this is one of the lessons that most adventure sports teach us that can help us so much in life. I first heard this, I believe, in a NASCAR racer interview, and the interviewer asked the racer, what do you do when there's carnage on the track, when cars are spinning and fires are starting and there's no way through and you're traveling at over 100 miles an hour and you got to get through that tiny little hole in the wreckage that's skidding all over the place? And the response was, none of that exists. You only look for the gap. You look for that little gap, and maybe it's between the wall and another car, but the wall doesn't exist, the car doesn't exist, only the gap. You look at the gap, and you get through. And I thought a lot about that. That was many years ago, but it really has proven true. And one of the ways that this illustrated itself with me is when I started mountain biking. I was a road biker as a kid. There weren't mountain bike trails. And matter of fact, mountain bikes just started to come out in the mid-'80s when I was doing a lot of road biking. Regardless, when I started mountain biking, I had to break a lot of road biking habits, and road biking and mountain biking both involve bicycles and pedaling, but they're completely different sports. One thing I learned very quickly with mountain biking is if I look at the rock I don't want to hit, just for a minute, that's what I'm going to hit. If I look at the edge of the trail that I don't want to go off, then that's where I'm going to go off the trail. Because in mountain biking, you don't have a broad road. Instead, you have a small trail. And sometimes the trails are generous, 24 inches wide or something, 18, 12. A lot of the trails we ride on are 6 inches. Hold your hands out, 6 inches apart, and imagine going through curves on a drop-off, on a steep slope, and that's your whole trail, 6 inches. Well, that's what mountain biking can be. And whereas in road biking, I pretty much had a good chunk of a shoulder or a car lane to work with. In mountain biking, it's tight curves, lots of obstacles, tree roots, drop-offs, cliffs, steep climbs, rocks, and I quickly learned if I looked at the challenge, if I looked at the obstacle, that's what would happen. I would hit it. Sure as the world. If I looked at the edge of the trail, then rather than executing the turn, I would just go right off the trail. And it was just such a weird psychological experience. At some point, as I kept mountain biking, the trail quit feeling narrow. Instead, I started to see all the space that the trail had to offer. Do I have a foot? Well, that gives me like 6 different lines that I could take in that foot. And I started playing in the available space and looking for the line that I wanted, the line between the rocks, the line that hits the root squarely, the line that helps you to maintain speed through the corner rather than worrying about going off the trail. And mountain biking got way, way easier and my skill improved and I became a much, much better mountain biker because I started seeing the way through. I started seeing the best line instead of seeing the danger or seeing the obstacle. So mountain biking teaches this. Skiing teaches this. If you're in the moguls or you're in an extreme double black going down through the cliffs, you can't look at where you don't want to go. You can only look at where you want to go or you're not going to make it. I mean, think about the moguls. You have to stay in the groove, and that doesn't mean the bottom of the trench. That's not what I'm talking about, but you know what I mean. When you're in the groove, you're bouncing through the moguls, and your skis are doing beautiful things, and you go down the mountain, and it's just like flying. But as soon as you look at the place you don't want to be, you get sucked into the bottom of a trench, you hit a mogul hard, you miss your turn, you lose your gap, you lose your line, and then it's helter-skelter all over the mountain after that. Life is like this. Why did I throw my disc into the pond yesterday? Because I was looking at the pond rather than where I wanted to go. It's human nature. Here's another example, and it's something you can try. For most people, this works pretty well. It's kind of fun. The goal is to stand on one foot without falling down. Okay, you're going to balance on one foot. Close your eyes and don't fall down. Lift up your foot and don't fall down. Now, after you try that for 10 or 15 seconds, then try again. But this time, I want you to think about standing up and balancing right through the top of your head as if a string is holding you there like a marionette. Think about standing tall and up and balanced. Do that for 15 seconds. Was one of those a little bit easier than the other? Kind of crazy, isn't it? For most people, when they try not to fall, they stumble, they hop around on one foot. But when they think about standing in alignment, standing in balance, and standing up, then they get perfectly balanced. Here's the axiom, okay, from adventure sports, but it applies to all of life. Humans move toward our focus. Whatever we look at is what we move toward. It's very, very powerful. So if you look at what you don't want, then that's what's going to happen. If you look at what you do want to happen, then you will align your whole life toward that thing, and you'll get more of the outcomes that you're looking for. I don't even remember the podcast, but I heard something last week that also was very, very telling. They were talking about the history of the United States and some of the best inventions ever that happened in this land of inventors in the United States. Of course, we're talking about the 250th anniversary of this country. The invention that topped the chart for this podcast was a white line on the side of the road. It used to be that when cars came out, you had the edge of the road, there weren't any lines on the edge of the road, and people kept slamming into each other. Why? Well, when you're meeting a car and you don't want to hit the car, what are you looking at? You're looking at the car you don't want to hit. We steer toward our focus. So some genius, I don't even know who, said, let's put a white line on the side of the road to give people something to look at besides the drop-off on the edge of the road that they're afraid of. Let them know that there's a line that they can focus on, and as long as they stay on that line, they'll stay on the road. So we started painting, it's probably millions of miles of white lines down roads, and you know what? Cars quit slamming into each other. People started focusing on the white line. They felt safe. They knew where the edge of the road was, and they steered toward the white line, which was safety, instead of toward the oncoming car that they didn't want to hit. It's just human nature. It's just the way we are. And again, it is amazingly powerful. It doesn't really matter what the adventure sport is. You'll learn that if you look at the gap, you look at the hole, you look at the line you want to hit, you'll be way more successful in your adventure sport. I kind of have mixed feelings about goals. On the one hand, I believe in goals, and I've always set goals for my life. I set long-term goals. I break them down into shorter-term goals. I break them down into weekly and daily and even goals for each hour or maybe even 15 minutes. But at the same time, there's been such I'm just going to say plethora of people saying if you set goals, you can achieve your dreams. Set more goals, achieve your dreams, and confess your goals as if they've already happened. And it all kind of came out of Think and Grow Rich, that old success book from decades and decades and decades ago. And we've just heard so much of that. And when you set a goal and you don't accomplish the goal, then it's like, oh, what's wrong with me? This is supposed to work. I mean, in more recent years, people started manifesting things, which was just another way of saying, I'm setting a goal, I'm believing it's going to happen, and eventually it'll happen. And that kind of stuff just got a little bit too off in the woo-woo for me. I do believe in goals, but I have found that this focus concept might be even better. Think of what you want to be. Well, it's kind of like grafting. Fruit trees, you can take the limb off of one type of tree and you can put a slit in the bark and insert the limb in a trunk of another type of tree and wrap it just right so it starts to get its life energy from that trunk. And you can have one tree that grows 4, 5, 6 different kinds of fruit. It's kind of a crazy thing, but we can do that in our own lives by engrafting new skills, new characteristics into our lives. And the way we do that is, well, simply, you just make it your focus. It's kind of like setting a goal. The distinction here is that instead of setting the goal in the timeline and making all the little other goals and everything else, you just start to focus on becoming more and more like the person who's accomplished this dream. And as you make the dream real in your life and you see yourself making steps and making progress and achieving a little bit more toward it, when it becomes your focus, it's almost like the world opens up and starts handing you opportunities. And I think what's really going on is that you see the opportunities that perhaps were around you all the time, but you didn't recognize them for the value and for what they were until you began to focus. Travis and I, when we started the Adventure Sports Podcast, around that time, we were trying to invent new things, and we had invented a natural fuel backpacking stove, which we obviously talked about on the podcast. If you listen to the old podcast, you'll hear about it every show. But we thought, well, what kinds of things would be really good products to market? And so I said, well, hey, let's think about the things that annoy us. Because every annoyance, every frustration, every impediment to getting stuff done is an opportunity to solve a problem. And if you solve a problem, then maybe you can solve it for a whole lot of people, and that can become a product. So we started viewing life that way. What annoys me? And all of a sudden, we had more ideas for new products than we could do anything with. And of course, all of the entrepreneurs out there that have some experience, they know that make it and they will come is not true. You have to make it and market the heck out of it in a very smart way with a proper investment. And then after all the marketing, people will start to buy your product. It's not as simple as just having a clever idea, but a lot of people don't know how to have a clever idea in the first place. Well, what you do is you look for what annoys me. Don't let me confuse you here. I don't mean that we should be focusing on things that annoy us or focusing on our problems. Not that. Instead, it's that the annoyance becomes the trigger that says, okay, what's the solution? And we focus on the potential solutions. This also applies to habits. And this is a big one because we all have bad habits, things that hold us back. And I want to tell you about snorkeling at over 9,000 feet at Taylor Reservoir a few weeks ago, because it's another illustration for the way that bad habits hold us back. But that'll come up in just a moment. First, if you just think about the habits that get in your way, the things that you know are keeping you from living your best life, right? We all have them. We all have these habits. If you try not to do the bad thing, you're trying to break, quote unquote, the habit. I want to break the habit. I don't want to do this anymore, whatever it is. You're going to keep doing it because your focus is toward not doing the thing, but you're still focusing on the thing. So the habit is going to be almost impossible to defeat. So what you need to do instead is you choose the mode of being, how you want to behave, who you want to be that does not include the habit, that is the opposite of the bad habit, and you start to pursue that dream of who you want to grow into. And as you pursue that, the bad habit suddenly just drops away, and you start accomplishing its replacement, which is the good thing that you want. It's like choosing to look at the gap between the rocks instead of looking to avoid the rocks. Same thing. So in life, if you want to break a habit, just choose its opposite good and pursue it, and let the habit go. But I want to talk about Taylor Reservoir now, and you've heard us talk in the past about river snorkeling or things like that. It's such a fun way to experience the aquatic environment, and we were at Taylor Reservoir. Like I said, this is snowmelt, and it was pretty early season. The water was very, very cold, and I don't know the temperature, but trust me, very, very cold. So cold that if you don't have on a really good wetsuit with a hood and gloves, you're going to be in trouble. So I crawled in the water, not with one wetsuit plus a hood and gloves, but with two wetsuits plus booties on my feet, a hood, and gloves. And it was my first time to use this hood, and it was my first time to try to use the double wetsuit. So I'm going along, doing what you do, looking for fish and enjoying the lay of the land under the water. It's just such a fun thing. Anyway, I won't go on about that. But for some reason, I decided to dive down. And with two wetsuits on and no weight belt, you're not going to dive very far. But I managed to get down enough to fill my snorkel with water. No big deal, right? You surface, you just blow the water out of your snorkel and keep going. Well, for whatever reason, I didn't have any air left in my lungs. So as everybody knows, if that happens, you just spit out your snorkel and lift up your head so you can take a breath. Now, you've been holding your breath under the water for a while, so you probably feel an urgency to get that breath. Okay, I surface, my snorkel is full of water, I don't have enough air in my lungs to blow it out, So I try to spit out my snorkel. What I didn't realize is that the edges of my hood came in around my mouth so closely that they were holding my snorkel in my mouth. I couldn't spit out my snorkel, and my hands were full. I had a GoPro in one hand and some gear in the other hand, and I'm like, I can't pull the snorkel out of my mouth. I can't spit the snorkel out of my mouth. So I dropped something and reached up, and I yanked the snorkel out of my mouth. When I tried to raise my head, I realized that the two wetsuits plus the bottom of the hood were so stiff, I couldn't raise my head out of the water adequately. So at this point, it starts to feel kind of panicky. I haven't had a breath in a long time, and I can't even get my face to stay up out of the water. So the solution is you have to roll over onto your back so your face is pointed up, right? Well, as I'm trying to roll over, I realize my dexterity is shot because I have on too many wetsuits. I wasn't flexible enough to just swim like I would normally swim. Obviously, I survived. Everything turned out fine. I got a breath of air, and I promised myself that the next time I went snorkeling, I would trim back the edge of my hood so my mask doesn't tangle with it, my snorkel doesn't tangle with it. But here's the point. I think a lot of bad habits come out of fear. We do things to protect ourselves or because we feel like if we give up the bad habit, we'll be too lonely or won't have any fun or I don't know. But it's like putting on that second wetsuit. I put on the second wetsuit because I knew how cold that water was and I wanted to be warm, but I was afraid of just getting chilled to the bone, which often happens when you're snorkeling in these snow melt mountain lakes. So I put on two wetsuits, but I didn't really test the functionality, right? I mean, this was the test, I guess. But bad habits are like that. We put on extra layers of baggage that we carry around. We defend it as if we need it when maybe we don't, and we don't realize how it's holding us back and how dangerous it can be when things go sideways. Bad habits are just like that. We had a great day snorkeling, and next time I go up, I will only wear one wetsuit, and the hood will be trimmed back, and I will be optimized for what I'm getting ready to do. In other words, looking toward the solutions instead of fearing the things that you don't want to happen. Again, we've come full circle. This is all about living your best life. And I'm talking about adventure sports that we've done just recently and what I'm still learning every day when I go out to do an adventure sport. Sunday, I went mountain biking. And because of the wedding and a lot of other things that have been going on, I have not been mountain biking very much this summer. So I chose a pretty challenging, steep trail to go up, and I thought, I haven't had a chance to warm up. I haven't done this for a long time. I'm probably not really prepared, but it's the way I want to go, and so I just took off up this trail, and I made it about a third the way up, and I was huffing and puffing and hurting, and I pulled over in the side of the trail, and I was getting disgusted with myself. I was like, man, I used to be in such great shape. How come this is such a hard thing now? And I thought, how many weeks of hard work will it take to get back to where I was before? And then I kept biking, but I wasn't as tired. And as I biked more, I suddenly realized, I'm warmed up now. And I got back in my groove, and suddenly it was much, much easier than it was. What's the point of that? Preparation, planning ahead a little bit. Doing that steep climb would not have been such a challenge had I simply taken the time to warm up first. All I needed to do was put in a mile or so on a flatter trail before I started the steep climb. Sometimes that's what we need in life. You could call it a warm-up, or maybe it's a rest. Maybe instead of taking on the big challenge, trying to bulldog that bull with sharp horns that weighs 800 pounds, maybe first we need to rest, or we need to warm up, or we need to understand all the things that are really necessary to accomplish our goals. Well, there's another illustration for mountain biking. Prepare in advance and keep your focus on the desired outcome. Overcome habits by developing new habits, which are the good opposites of the bad, and look where you want to go. Don't be afraid of the storm. Just march forward looking at the end goal. And that is one of the biggest life lessons for success and for living your best life. Okay, that's one example of what the new podcast is going to be like. It won't always involve adventure sports, but it will always involve living your best life and things that I've learned along the way. It's not that it's original. This is all stuff that I've learned. You can also share what you've learned. You can share in the comments. You can share via email. You can share all the ways that we can connect with each other, or maybe you would be a guest on the show and you can share what you've learned. But iron sharpens iron. And if we all start sharing, wow, this is a life skill that made such a difference for me, I think we can really all benefit from it. Life is the biggest adventure. The biggest adventure of all is taking on the challenge of living your best life, taking on the challenge of being true to yourself and to others, taking on the challenge of doing what you know is right. That is life's biggest adventure. And that's what the new show is going to be about. So I will let you know when I start posting episodes. They will not be regular episodes. I don't have time. It's just when I have a moment and I have something worth saying, that's when I'll put together an episode and I'll post it. So it's going to be one of those things where you're going to want to subscribe so you get the notice that, hey, there's a new one now, because there won't be a schedule. One reason I'm telling you this is I've been putting off starting this new podcast now for about 2 years. And I don't know why I've been putting it off. I've been looking at the distractions. I've been looking at the what ifs. I've been looking at the dangers and how much time it'll take and what if it doesn't go well, and breaking my own rules, right? So I'm making the commitment to you today. Soon, there will be episodes posted, and I will announce the name of the new podcast. And it's a different format. The Adventure Sports Podcast will remain the Adventure Sports Podcast that you know and love, but the new podcast will allow us to explore things that we just don't usually talk about on this one. The book is 99 Words, Building a Better Life. The new podcast is going to be entitled very similarly to that, and I'll let you know when it comes out. Thanks for listening today. You know, I don't know what your favorite outdoor sport is, but I do know that whether it's rock climbing or skydiving or mountain biking, whether it's skiing, snorkeling, scuba diving, you have to focus on the positive outcomes to avoid the ones you don't want. And figure out what your favorite adventure sport is so you can begin to experience these things firsthand and make sure that you do get out there and have some fun.